Welcome to the Deep Dive, your ultimate shortcut to truly understanding complex dynamics. We pull off the key insights, the surprising facts from the sources you share with us. Today, we're inviting you to step beyond, those perfectly manicured lawns and pristine curtains of what looks like an idyllic American suburb.
Right, that perfect image.
Exactly, into a world that's just simmering with suburban secrets, profound moral quandaries, and some really unexpected human truths. We're talking about a place where, well, every smile hides a story, and every neatly trimmed hedge could conceal a confession.
We're talking about Wisteria Lane.
The iconic Wisteria Lane.
Indeed. And our source material for this deep dive, it's this really captivating collection of excerpts. It's titled Sins and Absolution on Wisteria Lane.
Okay.
And it's more than just a gripping story. It's like a rich tapestry of human behavior. It highlights these really intricate dynamics of guilt, responsibility, and the, often agonizing choices people make when they're under immense life-altering pressure.
That's right. And for you, our dedicated learner, this deep dive isn't just about unraveling the drama, the secrets of Wisteria Lane. We're using this really captivating narrative as a unique lens to enrich your English language skills.
That's a key part of this.
Absolutely. We're going to meticulously extract and explore useful vocabulary, common phrases, and really delve deep into the cultural context behind them. We want to help you not just comprehend the story, but truly internalize and use this language yourself. So get ready to uncover the dark secrets lurking on Wisteria Lane, but also to significantly level up your vocabulary and cultural understanding along the way.
And as we immerse ourselves in these dramatic events, our central framing question, kind of our focus for the deep dive, is this. How do these characters on Wisteria Lane grapple with their moral failings, their personal demons, and the intense societal pressures all around them? And crucially, how are these deeply personal struggles and the broader cultural expectations, how are they expressed? How are they revealed and sometimes even concealed through the very language they use? We'll be listening closely, to how their words might betray their inner turmoil or justify their actions, or sometimes just unwittingly reveal their true, often flawed nature.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with a scene that throws us straight into chaos, really. It sets the tone for so much of the moral struggle that follows the Van de Kamp family secret.
The big one.
It all begins with an unforeseen catastrophe. Just imagine the sheer disorienting shock, the immediate panic in the aftermath when Andrew Young, in a moment of reckless driving, strikes Mrs. Solis. And the source explicitly calls it a hit and run.
Yeah, and that term itself is loaded.
Exactly. This isn't just a simple car accident. It's a severe crime with profound legal and moral implications.
That phrase, hit and run, it's a critical legal term. It immediately signals just how serious the situation is. It describes, a traffic offense where a driver involved in a collision, that's the hit, then leaves the scene without stopping to identify themselves or offer aid to anyone injured. That's the run.
Right.
And it's viewed with particular, scorn in most societies because it shows this blatant disregard for human life, a fundamental shirking of legal and ethical responsibility. And the source material, it compounds this. It tells us Andrew had been drinking, turning it into more than just a simple accident. It explicitly states this wasn't some simple DUI.
Okay, DUI, another acronym that's just incredibly important to understand here. It stands for driving under the influence, right?
Exactly. Operating a vehicle while impaired by alcohol or drugs.
So when you combine a DUI with a hit and run,
yeah,
that escalates the severity of the charges dramatically, doesn't it?
Oh, hugely. Often leading to felony charges, significantly harsher penalties, especially if there's serious injury or, God forbid, a fatality. Culturally, these acts are seen as deeply irresponsible, maybe even cowardly. They often trigger intense public outrage.
You can imagine.
Yeah, and the immediate instinct for many in such a desperate situation, which we see play out right here, is often pure self-preservation, a desperate attempt to avoid consequences. But that clashes directly with, a fundamental moral duty to help.
Right. The panic takes over.
Exactly. The initial reaction is rarely calm. It's panic, followed by this desperate desire to avoid consequences. And Bree struggles with this deeply, almost immediately. Society views these crimes with extreme disapproval, like we said, because they show this fundamental disregard for human life and legal responsibility. This really sets the stage for the Van de Kamps' this descent into deception.
And what a struggle it is, particularly for Bree. Which brings us right to her profound moral conflict and Andrew's chillingly cold calculation.
Yeah, the contrast is stark.
Bree Vandekamp is a character who, as our source tells us, has been, quote, defined by a lifelong burden of guilt. The narration paints this really vivid picture, offering us some surprisingly relatable examples, actually, that highlight the subtle cultural pressures she operates under. It shows just how deep-seated her need for perfection really is.
Yes, the script mentions her feeling guilty about not getting straight A's as a child. And this isn't just about grades, is it?
No, not at all.
It speaks to that intense pressure on young people, particularly in certain, let's say, American suburban cultures, to achieve academic perfection, not just for knowledge, but for external validation, right? To uphold a certain idealized image of success and good behavior. It's about being the best. And anything less can feel like a personal failing for someone like Bree.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then there's that classic teenage guilt, letting her boyfriend go to second base. Now, for anyone learning English, this is such a quintessential American euphemism.
Right, you hear it a lot in pop culture.
You do. It refers to a certain stage of intimacy in a relationship, specifically physical contact that goes beyond kissing, but typically stops short of, well, full intercourse. It's drawn from the metaphor of baseball bases, obviously. Culturally, this phrase hints at the complex, often contradictory societal expectations placed on young women regarding sexual behavior, purity, navigating those tricky adolescent relationships. The guilt here is deeply tied to perceived moral boundaries and social norms of the time, maybe even still today in some circles.
And finally, as a newlywed, she felt guilty about taking 3 weeks to get out her thank you cards.
Seems so small, right? But telling.
It really is. While it might seem trivial to some, it perfectly illustrates the almost obsessive importance placed on social graces, on etiquette, on maintaining appearances in her world. Prompt thank you notes are not just polite. They are a significant sign of good upbringing, attentiveness, respect in certain social circles. So Bree's guilt over these seemingly minor transgressions underscores a personality that's just wired for self-reproach, constantly striving for this unattainable ideal of perfection, where even the smallest slip-up feels like a monumental failure.
But then the source contrasts this deep-seated, almost trivial guilt with the sin she was about to commit. Aiding Andrew in covering up a hit and run. It's such a powerful, disturbing shift, isn't it?
It's jarring. From minor anxieties to a truly monumental ethical breach.
And Andrew, on the other hand, shows almost no remorse. It's a chilling reflection of his character. His shocking proposals, like suggesting he go to Canada till the statute of limitations is up, they're just chillingly pragmatic.
That phrase, statute of limitations, it's a crucial legal concept, and Andrew's use of it, well, it reveals a calculated mind, doesn't it?
Good.
It's a law that sets the maximum time after an event within which legal proceedings can be initiated. For crimes, if a certain period passes without prosecution, you can no longer be charged. So Andrew's suggestion reveals this cynical understanding of the law, focused purely on evading justice by waiting out the clock.
Just hoping it goes away.
Exactly. But the source quickly reminds us of the stark reality. If Carlos's mother dies, there is no statute of limitations, because it's murder. And that single line just raises the stakes immensely, transforming a desperate gamble into a potential lifelong cover-up for potentially a capital crime.
Wow. And his callous dismissal of the victim, calling her an old lady and saying, with this shocking indifference, she's lived her life.
That line.
It reveals such a disturbing lack of empathy. That phrase, she's lived her life, it's sometimes used, maybe casually, to minimize the impact of harm or death to an older person, implying their life had less value or was over anyway. But when you hear it in this context, after a severe hit and run,
it's just cold.
It functions as a cold, self-serving justification for inexcusable behavior. It highlights Andrew's profound moral emptiness.
This character study of Andrew, it provides such a stark and unsettling contrast to Bree's internal torment, doesn't it? It highlights a certain dangerous individual trait, or maybe even a cultural perspective in some extreme cases, where individual convenience and self-preservation completely override personal responsibility and, frankly, basic human compassion. He embodies this chilling amorality that makes Bree's desperate actions for him even more tragic somehow.
So, caught between Andrew's cold calculation and her own desperate unconditional love for her son, Bree concocts this desperate cover-up plan. Get rid of the car.
Right. The next logical or illogical step.
The details are almost cinematic in their intent to create plausible deniability. Take it to a bad part of town, leave the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked. Hoping for theft, basically. Hoping it gets stolen to secure insurance or provide a convenient scapegoat.
Yeah, the goal is meticulously thought out in a panicked sort of way to make it look like someone else stole the car and was then involved in the hit and run. Their phrasing, as captured in the source, it's very deliberate, almost legalistic in its attempt to create distance from the crime.
How so?
Well, Bree rationalizes, if the police don't find it, we'll get the insurance, and if they do, it wasn't in our possession. Anyone could have hit Mrs. Solis. See, it's an attempt to muddy the waters, avoid direct culpability. That phrase, it wasn't in our possession, is key.
Oh, okay.
It's a legalistic way of saying they weren't directly responsible for the car at the moment of the accident, creating a loophole, however flimsy it might be.
And Bree's justification for all of this, for compromising her own stringent moral code, it's truly heart-wrenching in its maternal desperation. Our son could spend the rest of his life in jail. I won't allow that.
Pure maternal instinct overriding everything.
It really is. It's a mother's fierce, protective love overriding her deeply ingrained moral compass. The source notes that Bree knew what she was about to do was wrong, but like most sinners, she would worry about her guilt tomorrow.
That line, like most sinners, she would worry about her guilt tomorrow, it offers such a fascinating and deeply relatable psychological insight into human nature, doesn't it?
It really does.
It speaks to this common tendency, almost a coping mechanism, to defer unpleasant emotions, to put off dealing with the moral weight of a decision until it's absolutely unavoidable. It's a form of self-deception, really, a way to justify present actions by postponing future consequences for one's conscience.
Yeah, deal with it later.
Right. It suggests that the immediate overwhelming pressure of a crisis often outweighs long-term moral considerations for many people, leading them to compromise in the present and only reckon with the emotional fallout later. It's the human capacity for denial in action.
And just like that, the serene, almost picture-perfect facade of Wisteria Lane is shattered, exposing all that underlying turmoil. The scene immediately shifts to the raw aftermath, the collective response of the neighbors, which underscores that this isn't just a private crisis for the Vandekams, right?
No, the whole community is impacted, drawn into the dark ripple effects of the accident. The source describes Lynette showing up with a broom, Susan with trash bags,
Trying to clean up.
and Bree, ever the meticulous and pragmatic one, appearing with industrial strength solvent.
Of course she does.
This imagery is quite powerful, both literally and metaphorically. They're physically trying to clean up the blood and debris, the concrete evidence of the tragedy. But it's also a clear metaphor for their desperate desire to erase the ugly reminder of what happened.
Good point.
That phrase, ugly reminder, it isn't just about the physical stains on the road. It represents the lingering guilt, the moral stain, the undeniable presence of the accident that now hangs over the community. It's a constant shadow. It's something they collectively want to scrub away, make disappear, but of course they can't. It's a testament to how even seemingly minor acts of community can be fraught with deeper, unacknowledged tension.
Absolutely. The focus then shifts to the Solis family's profound grief and the community's collective outcry for justice. Juanita, the victim, is in a coma with no certainty of recovery. It highlights the precariousness of life, the devastating consequences of Andrew's actions. Carlos, her son, is described as devastated. That's such a strong adjective, devastated.
It really conveys the depth of it. It signifies an extreme depth of sadness, profound shock, a complete sense of loss. It goes far beyond merely being sad or upset. It implies this crushing blow that has left him emotionally ruined. And the community's empathy, and indeed its outrage, it's palpable, immediate. Lynette, ever practical and fiercely protective of her neighborhood, is described as having quite a pitching arm as she instinctively throws a rock at a speeding car.
A visceral reaction.
Totally. A reaction to the danger now present on their street. She's also been up all night researching, digging into statistics, finding sobering facts like 1 out of every 4 traffic accidents happens on residential streets. This provides a relatable, almost statistical grounding for the community's outrage, turning the abstract threat into a tangible local fear.
And the collective desire for justice is clear, almost a communal roar. A neighbor exclaims, "I hope whoever hit Juanita gets put away for life."
You hear that phrase a lot.
Yeah, it's a really common idiom in English, meaning to be sentenced to life imprisonment. It reflects the intense emotional response to such a crime, the desire for the perpetrator to face the most severe legal consequences imaginable. It highlights that tension between a community's raw need for immediate, clear justice and the often complex, drawn-out realities of the legal system.
And what's fascinating here is the immediate, often unqualified judgment and call for the harshest possible punishment from the community. It's such a stark contrast to Bree's desperate, morally compromising attempt to avoid exactly that fate for her son.
Good point.
It vividly shows the different, often conflicting perspectives on justice within a society, one side seeking retribution and deterrence, the other seeking protection and mercy. It highlights the complexities of human morality when personal stakes are high.
Then we have John's visit to the hospital. He's offering prayer and support to the Solis family, which, somewhat unexpectedly, introduces this moment of unintentional humor through a misunderstanding.
Right, the sponge bath incident.
Exactly. Mrs. Solis, still in a coma, needs a sponge bath. Now, for our English learners, a sponge bath is when a person is washed with a wet sponge or cloth instead of immersing them in a tub or shower, often because they're too ill, too immobile, or just can't get out of bed.
Yeah, it's very practical, but also quite intimate, right? An act of personal care in a hospital setting.
Very much so. And when the nurse mentions that sometimes family members prefer to administer sponge baths themselves, John's reaction, "Come again." That's a polite, common way to ask someone to repeat what they've just said, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Or to express surprise.
Right. Often used when you didn't hear it clearly, or as in this case, when you're surprised or taken aback by what they said and want to confirm it. His swift and slightly embarrassed reply, "I think I'll pass," expresses his immediate discomfort with such an intimate task for someone who isn't family.
It's a light moment of awkwardness, yeah. But it also subtly highlights the role of prayer and religious support in times of crisis. John then pivots, offering to pray for Mrs. Solis in the chapel, finding a way to offer comfort that aligns with his comfort zone and his beliefs.
Okay, so from collective anxieties and the tragic consequences of crime, we shift now to intensely personal battles, hidden struggles, revealing how these characters cope with or tragically succumb to their own internal pressures and secret burdens. First up, we have that explosive, highly charged confrontation between Edie Britt and Martha Huber over, what was it, ridiculously petty stolen $40.
Oh, this scene is an absolute masterclass in using emotionally charged language to express disdain, resentment, and deep-seated cultural judgment.
Yeah, how so?
Well, Eddie's accusation hurled at Martha, I'd ask one of those men you parade through here. That's a deeply cutting remark. To parade through here suggests this constant, almost boastful, perhaps even vulgar display of men entering and leaving Martha's home. It implies a lack of discretion, promiscuity, a generally immoral lifestyle. It's designed to shame Martha for her perceived healthy sex life, a phrase Edie uses with heavy sarcasm and judgment.
Ouch. And Martha's response is equally sharp, isn't it? Hinting at some mutual unspoken dynamic of petty theft between them.
Exactly. Edie then escalates the verbal assault, saying, with utter disgust, I'm going to have to burn every sheet, in response to Martha's healthy sex life. Another sarcastic, disgusted jab. She follows up with this dramatic indictment of Martha's activities as debauchery and food theft, combining severe moral condemnation. Debauchery means excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures, often seen as morally corrupt, with a petty crime.
It's so over the top.
It is. It's a hyperbolic, almost theatrical accusation to express her utter contempt.
And the accusation of spying is also incredibly significant here.
Yes. It reveals this fundamental breakdown of trust and personal boundaries that characterizes their relationship. When Martha, pushed to her limit, says, "That's it." It's such a common phrase. It definitively signals the end of someone's patience or tolerance. It means I've had enough or I've reached my limit.
Okay.
The conflict culminates in Edie's definitive eviction notice. I want you gone by the time I get back. And Martha, with defiant pride and a clear desire to have the last word, responds, I'll do you one better. I will leave today.
Oh, I'll do you one better. That's a great idiom.
Isn't it? It means I will exceed your expectation, or I will give you an even more impressive or defiant response than you asked for. Here, it allows Martha to reclaim some agency, turning the eviction into her own choice. A final act of rebellion and assertion. The escalating, emotionally charged language perfectly mirrors the escalating conflict between these two formidable women.
Wow. Okay, so from that raw, outward clash between Edie and Martha, we shift now to a different kind of battle, one far more internal, perhaps even more heartbreaking, playing out within the quiet walls of Lynette's own home.
Yeah, Lynette's struggles are deeply personal and utterly debilitating.
She's completely exhausted, isn't she? Describing her sleep cycles totally out of whack and admitting to dozing off during the day. Out of whack. That's a fantastic informal idiom.
It is. It means something is not working properly, is out of balance, or in disarray. Here, it perfectly captures her disrupted sleep pattern and overall physical and mental state. She also confesses, I'm on my last nerves.
Another great one. Highly relatable.
Totally. It means she's extremely stressed, irritated, at the very limit of her patience or endurance, just feeling completely worn out.
This is where the often hidden struggles of parenthood, particularly for mothers, come so vividly to light. Lynette, at her breaking point, admits, I've screwed up my entire system by taking my kid's ADD medication.
Such a powerful, deeply vulnerable confession.
It reveals the immense, unrelenting pressure she feels to keep everything together, to maintain that facade of the perfectly functioning mother and the profound shame associated with addiction or needing help. In many cultures, there's this pervasive expectation for parents, especially mothers, to appear perfect, effortlessly managing everything without showing any cracks.
Which leads to people internalizing their difficulties instead of seeking help.
Exactly. Her desperate plea for more than a few crappy needles from the alternative medicine practitioner and the practitioner offering a powerful herbal remedy, it highlights Lynette's deep, almost desperate need for sleep and relief. When Lynette says, I'm going to level with you here.
I'll level with you.
Yeah, that's a common informal phrase, meaning I'm going to be honest and direct with you, or I'm going to tell you the unvarnished truth. It signals she's about to reveal something difficult or highly personal, which she then does about taking her children's medication, pulling back the curtain on her private struggle.
And the practitioner's request to use it judiciously, and Lynette's dismissive, sure, whatever, that's a small but incredibly significant moment, isn't it?
It really is. Tell us why.
Well, judiciously means using something with good judgment and discretion, carefully and wisely. Lynette's casual, sure, whatever, an idiom expressing indifference or dismissal starkly shows her desperation and self-deception. She has no intention of being careful or wise. She just wants immediate relief, regardless of the consequences. It just sets up her inevitable breakdown, illustrating how desperation can override caution.
And what a breakdown it is. Lynette finally confesses, with such raw vulnerability, I'm so sorry they have me as a mother, and I'm so tired of feeling like a failure. It's so humiliating.
Humiliating, that's a very strong adjective. It is. For feeling extreme shame and disgrace, making one feel foolish, undignified, or profoundly embarrassed in front of others, or even just in their own eyes, it perfectly captures her raw, intense vulnerability and the crushing weight of her perceived failures.
But here's where the narrative offers profound cultural insight in this powerful moment of human connection. Susan, in a moment of deep empathy and shared experience, courageously reveals her own struggles.
Yeah, she says, when Julie was a baby, I was out of my mind almost every day. I got so upset when Andrew and Danielle were little, I used their nap times to cry.
Wow.
This courageous act breaks the silent social contract, doesn't it? It challenges that pervasive illusion that other moms make it look so easy, a common damaging narrative that isolates mothers.
It's a powerful and deeply moving theme of shared vulnerability. Susan articulates it perfectly, giving voice to a universal struggle.
Nobody likes to admit that they can't handle the pressure. I think it's just like we think, it's easier to keep it all in. Which highlights that pervasive cultural tendency to suppress struggles, to present a perfect front, especially in a community that values outward perfection and flawless domesticity.
But then, the profound realization shared between them.
We should tell each other this stuff. It helps, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Such a simple, powerful moment.
It underscores the vital importance of shared experience, mutual support, honest communication in overcoming personal battles. It's a moment of true human connection, breaking through that isolating facade of suburbia.
Okay, moving on to the intricate threads of deception and desire, we see how love, suspicion, and vengeance intertwine, often with, dangerous consequences. Susan and Mike's rocky romance begins with that awkward wine-tasting date invitation from Mike.
Right, where he suggests they grab a room if it gets too late.
And then quickly adds the qualifier, as a last resort.
Yeah, explain that. To grab a room is pretty informal, right? Suggest getting a hotel room, often implying intimacy. Exactly. And his addition, as a last resort, means something done only when all other options have failed. It implies it's not his first preference, but a practical, if suggestive, fallback. It shows him trying to be smooth, maybe, but also revealing his intentions, perhaps a bit clumsily.
Right. Trying to maintain a semblance of casualness while subtly pushing for intimacy. Then Susan, ever the curious and perhaps overly suspicious one, finds wads of money and a gun in Mike's cabinet.
The plot thickens.
Her initial reaction, you're freaking out over cash. That's such a common informal idiom, isn't it? Meaning to react with extreme anxiety or panic over something that might seem trivial or easily explained to an outsider.
Yeah, it perfectly encapsulates her disproportionate concern and the intense emotional reaction she has to these seemingly suspicious items. Mike's explanation, I have a gun for protection and cash for emergencies. It's a common and often valid justification in American culture, sure. But Susan's deep-seated distrust leads her to accuse him of being completely walled off.
Completely walled off, another excellent evocative idiom.
It really is. It describes someone who is emotionally distant, secretive, unwilling to share their true thoughts or feelings, as if they've built this impenetrable wall around themselves.
And this perceived lack of transparency, these undisclosed aspects of Mike's life, they become a deal breaker for Susan.
Right. A deal breaker, a factor, issue, or situation that, if it occurs, will cause an agreement, a negotiation, or, crucially, a relationship to fail or end. In this case, it's Mike's secrets and his perceived unwillingness to share them.
And Mike, frustrated by Susan's rigid stance, retorts with that poignant observation, you're throwing something really great away to protect it.
That's another good idiom. It means sacrificing something valuable or good in order to guard something else, usually a secret or a perceived personal boundary. It highlights the profound tension between privacy and transparency in a relationship, and how, for Susan, every little detail is one thing, weird secrets is another.
It perfectly illustrates how secrets, even if seemingly innocent or well-intentioned, can just erode trust and ultimately jeopardize even promising relationships. It reveals the fragility of trust.
Then there's Gabrielle and John's forbidden affair, a classic example of, well, clandestine romance. Their secret meeting at the hospital required Gabrielle to be discreet.
Explain discreet.
Sure. It means careful and prudent in one's speech or actions, especially in order to keep something confidential, to avoid causing embarrassment, or to maintain secrecy, absolutely crucial in clandestine situations like an affair, where exposure could have severe social consequences.
Got it. John, though, he's burdened by this immense weight of guilt. He finally confesses, I hate myself for what we did, and profoundly, I can't sleep at night. A common physical manifestation of deep psychological torment.
Yeah, the guilt is eating him up. He desperately wants to make a clean break.
Make a clean break, another very common idiom.
Right, meaning to end a relationship or situation cleanly and definitively, without lingering complications, loose ends, or further entanglement. He even goes to Father Crowley for confession, seeking spiritual absolution.
John's confession to Father Crowley introduces significant religious themes, particularly from a Catholic perspective. The concept of mortal sin in Catholicism is critical here, a grave sin that, if committed with full knowledge and deliberate consent, threatens to separate a person from God and eternal life if not repented.
Right. The need for repentance and forgiveness is central.
So when Gabrielle learns about his confession, her reaction, have you lost your mind? That's a common and emphatic way to express extreme disbelief, anger, or exasperation at someone's perceived foolishness or recklessness, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And her frustrated, Lassie would have had a fire truck here by now.
Huh? That's a great pop culture reference.
Isn't it? It refers to the intelligent, heroic collie from the classic TV show Lassie. Used here, it sarcastically expresses her exasperation with Bongo, the dog, implying the dog is useless and inept compared to Lassie, and therefore John's decision to confess is just as unhelpful and misguided in her view.
Gabrielle's reaction, especially to John's pursuit of absolution, it starkly highlights her pragmatism versus John's developing morality. Her cynical questions about confessing later, perhaps when I'm 75, whether her repenting still counts.
It reveals this transactional, almost opportunistic view of sin and forgiveness, doesn't it? She's essentially trying to find a loophole, a way to enjoy her current desires while still securing future spiritual benefits, trying to have her cake and eat it too, basically. It's a telling character insight, exposing Gabrielle's self-centeredness at this stage of her life. Father Crowley's response emphasizes that for God's forgiveness, one must be truly sorry and promise not to commit the sin again, emphasizing genuine remorse and a change of heart. But Gabrielle's definitive, what I want is to be happy, is the blunt, unvarnished answer of a selfish child, as Father Crowley pointedly notes.
Yeah.
It shows that fundamental tension between immediate self-interest and deeper moral responsibility, where her immediate desires completely override any deeper ethical considerations or long-term spiritual consequences.
Okay, our next thread takes a chillingly dark turn with Paul Young's unwavering and destructive quest for vengeance. He's absolutely convinced, fueled by grief and this desperate need for a target, that Edie Britt is directly responsible for his wife Mary Alice's death.
His conversation with the hitman is terrifyingly cold, utterly devoid of human emotion. It paints this picture of a man just consumed by his need for retribution. When asked chillingly direct questions like, how are you going to do it? And is she going to suffer? The hitman gives these precise, unfeeling answers that reduce a human life to a mere calculation.
It's chilling.
And the hitman's warning, delivered with professional detachment, curiosity leads to guilt, guilt leads to talking, start caution, right? Highlighting the chain of events that could compromise his illicit business and his anonymity, and his stark statement, no refunds, no buyer's remorse.
Buyer's remorse. That's usually for buying a car, not this.
Exactly. It's a chilling business idiom applied to a dark, irrevocable transaction. Buyer's remorse is that feeling of regret after making a purchase, typically a big one. Here it means there's no turning back. The deal is final, deadly, and there's no room for any change of heart or regret once the act is committed. It underscores the profound, irreversible nature of Paul's decision. It's a point of no return.
And Paul's motivation is articulated with frightening clarity. My wife is dead because of Edie Britt. I absolutely want this.
That line profoundly underscores the destructive power of grief when it's coupled with a desperate, misplaced need for blame. It reveals how profound personal loss can distort perception, leading an individual down a path of extreme violence, seeking to inflict the same pain they feel onto another, even if their target is ultimately innocent of the actual crime. It's a raw depiction of how vengeance can consume and blind.
Okay, finally, we arrive at the unraveling of the past and the shocking truth about Mary Alice's mysterious note. This brings us full circle, really, to the very beginning of the Wisteria Lane saga. As Rex and Bree Van de Kamp grapple with the immense crisis of their son's crime, they pause for this poignant moment of reflection on their own parenting.
Yeah, Bree states, with a touch of melancholy, they sure didn't turn out like we expected them to. Such a common sentiment of parental regret, isn't it? Something many listeners can probably relate to.
For sure. Rex adds, even more poignantly, oh, we could have been better parents. That's just a universal expression of self-blame and introspection that often accompanies the challenges of raising children, especially when they stray from the desired path. It's a raw human moment, particularly given their current moral compromise in covering up Andrew's crime.
And the profound moral dilemma resurfaces, stark and unavoidable. What's the appropriate punishment for a child who drives over a woman? It's a question that cuts right to the heart of their current predicament, forcing them to confront the chasm between their idealized family life and the grim reality of their son's actions.
Yet, despite their children's grievous flaws and actions, that enduring, unconditional love of parents shines through. It's a powerful emotional anchor, as Rex states. No matter how the kids turn out, I still love them.
It's a testament to the complex, often messy and enduring nature of familial bonds, even in the face of profound disappointment and moral compromises.
Shifting to Carlos Solis, his profound shift in priorities is directly grief-driven, a powerful testament to how tragedy can force a reevaluation of life's values.
He expresses this deep desire to start a family, have a child for meaning beyond merely buying stuff. He states with newfound self-awareness, we're shallow people.
That self-assessment reflects a common cultural critique of materialism, doesn't it? And the widespread human search for deeper purpose, which is often found in the profound responsibilities and joys of parenthood and family life.
Absolutely. But Gabrielle, still clinging to her pre-agreed life plan, vehemently refuses. She reminds him, we made a deal, no kids. Carlos, attempting to negotiate this fundamental shift, tries to argue, deals were meant to be renegotiated.
But Gabrielle shuts him down decisively and with absolute finality, using that powerful and blunt idiom, we're not negotiating my uterus.
Wow. Yeah, that's clear.
That phrase highlights her strong stance on bodily autonomy and reproductive choice. It's a very clear, almost unyielding way of saying that her decision on this deeply personal matter is final and non-negotiable. It brings to light the often intense societal pressure around having children versus individual choices, a frequent and significant source of conflict in relationships, especially in cultures that highly value family and procreation.
And then the true unveiling of Martha Huber and the long-held secret that drove Mary Alice Young to suicide. Paul's conversation with her, ostensibly about a mundane topic like ants.
Right, the ants.
It cunningly leads to the truth about Mary Alice. Paul, still grieving and idealizing his dead wife, insists she couldn't kill a fly, that's how gentle she was. But Martha's cynical and utterly unfeeling response, then you must have lived with quite a few flies. It's such a sharp cutting jab.
Undermines his idealized view immediately.
Completely. And hints at the darker truth he's about to uncover. Her confession is chilling in its casual cruelty. I was desperate for money. And then the twisted, self-serving justification for her blackmail. I'd rather take it from a bad person than a good one.
Ugh.
She reveals, with a chilling lack of concern, that she didn't know she'd shoot herself. But the true, horrifying crux of the issue, the secret that drove Mary Alice to her desperate act, is her next statement. Your wife didn't kill herself because I wrote a note. She killed herself because of what she did to that poor baby.
Oh my God.
That single line reveals the true dark secret Mary Alice was desperately hiding, a secret far more grave than anything Paul had imagined.
And Martha's chilling lack of remorse is further underlined by her selective and hypocritical application of religious tenets.
Yeah, she states with this twisted sense of moral authority, read the Bible, suicide's a big no-no. And then, immediately after confessing her part in Mary Alice's death, she adds with sickening piety, I'm praying for Mary Alice. After what she did, she'll need all of our prayers.
It's unbelievable.
It's a classic example of using religion, or rather a superficial understanding of it, to justify one's own actions and avoid personal guilt. Deflecting blame by citing a greater sin committed by the victim, it's a shocking display of self-righteousness, revealing a deep moral corruption beneath a veneer of religiosity.
This whole journey through Wisteria Lane brings us to a crucial reflection on guilt, absolution, and the human condition as a whole. The source material, both at its beginning and end, grounds us with that powerful recurring line. There is a widely read book that tells us everyone is a sinner.
That phrase, a widely read book, it's a culturally significant one in Western societies, isn't it? While it doesn't explicitly name it, it very strongly refers to the Bible or other foundational religious scriptures, which indeed teach the concept of original sin or universal human fallibility. It carries immense cultural and moral weight, framing the entire narrative within a universal understanding of human imperfection and the inherent capacity for moral missteps within all individuals.
And what's truly fascinating is how the diverse characters on Wisteria Lane, in their various responses to their transgressions, represent the entire spectrum of guilt, and how individuals cope or fail to cope with their actions, as the narration itself meticulously points out.
Right.
First, there are those who, not everyone, feels guilt over the bad things they do. We saw this clearly with characters like Andrew Young and Martha Huber. They demonstrate this shocking absence of genuine remorse or empathy for their actions, prioritizing self-preservation or personal gain over any moral accountability. They exist in this chilling realm of amorality, seemingly untouched by the suffering they cause.
Then you have those who assume more than their share of the blame, exemplified powerfully by Brie Van de Kamp. Her character is just consumed by guilt, not just for the major sin she commits by aiding her son, but for a lifetime of minor perceived imperfections from grades to thank you notes. This highlights how some individuals are predisposed to internalize fault and self-reproach, regardless of the objective severity of the action, often burdened by an almost pathological need for perfection. Her constant state of internal judgment shapes her very identity.
The narration also thoughtfully mentions those who soothe their consciences with small acts of kindness. While the source doesn't explicitly show a character doing this in great detail, it's such a profoundly universal human coping mechanism, isn't it?
It really is. It's the psychological idea that by doing something good, you can somehow balance out, mitigate, or atone for the bad you've done. A way to reestablish a sense of moral equilibrium. It's a common, almost instinctual drive to alleviate internal discomfort through positive external actions.
And of course, we clearly see those who soothe their consciences by telling themselves their sins were justified. Martha Huber is the prime chilling example here.
Absolutely. She rationalizes her blackmail and the subsequent suicide of Mary Alice by claiming Mary Alice was a bad person due to her past actions. This self-justification, this twisted logic that blames the victim, allows her to completely avoid feeling any genuine remorse or taking responsibility for the devastation she caused. It's a powerful demonstration of cognitive dissonance and moral evasion.
Finally, there are the ones who simply vow to do better next time and pray for forgiveness, as we saw with John.
Right. This represents a more traditional path to absolution, rooted in religious belief, genuine self-reflection, and a sincere desire for repentance and change. It's a path built on acknowledging fault, seeking spiritual cleansing, and committing to a different future.
What's truly fascinating is how the detailed events and intricate character studies on Wisteria Lane serve as this vivid microcosm for these universal human struggles. It shows us, in vivid and often shocking detail, the complex psychological reactions to guilt, the myriad different ways people try to cope with their wrongdoings, and the varied paths they take or desperately avoid towards responsibility, redemption, or even self-deception.
It's a compelling and deeply insightful look at the messy, contradictory, and profoundly human condition.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that the lives in Wisteria Lane, while dramatic, sometimes outlandish, often darkly humorous, they perfectly illustrate profound human themes. Sin, consequence, the varied paths to or tragically away from absolution. We've navigated the immediate panic of a hit and run, the suffocating weight of perfectionist guilt, the chilling calculation of denial, and the desperate measures people take to protect their secrets or their loved ones. And throughout this, we've extracted some incredibly useful English vocabulary and explored the rich cultural nuances that give these phrases their true meaning, hopefully helping you not just understand the story, but also the world it reflects.
Yeah, we've seen how precise legal terms like hit and run and statute of limitations define critical consequences, while vivid idioms such as on my last nerves or out of whack reveal deeply internal emotional states.
Right.
The exploration of cultural context behind euphemisms like second base or the nuanced importance of thank you cards opens a fascinating window into specific societal expectations within a suburban American setting, and how phrases like I'll do you one better or negotiating my uterus convey power dynamics and personal resolve.
So as you reflect on this deep dive into the hidden lives of Wisteria Lane, maybe consider this provocative question. In a world where, as the source tells us, everyone is a sinner and secrets are commonplace, is true absolution found primarily through external forgiveness from others or a divine power?
Or is it an internal peace that comes only from self-acceptance and true repentance? Or perhaps simply through the difficult, often painful lessons learned over the passage of time, allowing for a quiet kind of peace? What does this deep dive suggest about the fundamental nature of human morality itself and our inherent, often contradictory capacity for both profound darkness and unexpected light?
And how do the subtle nuances of the language used, the very words chosen by these characters, reveal not just their individual personalities, but the underlying cultural values and pressures at play in their world?
Good questions to ponder.
We encourage you to reflect on these patterns, the layers of meaning in everyday language, and perhaps even noticing similar dynamics in your own observations of human behavior and language in the world around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, Eric.
We'll see you next time.